What is your calling? Maybe it's something you love to do, a goal you want to achieve, a skill you want to learn, or a difference you want to make. You know it's part of who you are and part of the life you want. But do you know how you'll get there? The military can help you pursue your calling with countless opportunities to help you build a future filled with purpose. You have a calling. We have an answer. Learn more at todaysmilitary.com.
To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us to face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Surprise bill? Need fast funds? CashNet USA can help. When you need money fast, be the hero.
Apply in minutes at cashnetusa.com and get a fast decision. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Gibbs Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a pretty excellent podcast for you today. As joining me in segment number 2, we are going to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does such tremendous work taking a look at this great game of college basketball, doing his show/podcast, the Rob's Best Bets Show. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to dive into a little bit of what we saw on Saturday because we saw some very wild results. We're going to be looking at some games for Sunday with him as well, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @Janet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but boy, oh boy, did we have a mammoth day of college basketball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Got a lot of trends to dissect. We've got a lot of dominant performances, the positive and the negative, but I do think that we need to start out with what I thought was just the nuttiest game of the day. Triple overtime between Creighton and Seton Hall, and Creighton had been cashing a lot of unders. Well, let's call it what it is. When your game has the triple overtime, you're probably not going to cash an under. And Creighton, 97-94. There was just absolute pandemonium in double overtime when it looked like Seton Hall was going to be able to put this game away for good. Not sure what quite happened there with regards to the officials' decisions. Hopefully they give it a comment at some point. I wasn't able to see it because we had a billion other games. But in this one for Seton Hall, you had 4 different guys grab at least 9 rebounds in this game. Kadari Richmond goes for a triple-double, 21 points, 11 boards, 11 assists. He remains cold from 3, but he continues to do everything oh so well. And for Seton Hall, just 9 turnovers in a triple overtime game, but Creighton, just 6 turnovers in a triple overtime game. Even though Creighton does lose the battle on the glass, Baylor Shireman was able to chip in there 20 points, 10 boards, 6 assists. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 7 blocks, 9 boards, 28 points, 12 of 23 from the floor. Creighton goes 13 of 36 from three-point range. Seton Hall, 5 of 14. This was a wild, wild result, to say the least. And out there in the Big East as well, Marquette team has been a little bit wobbly. They went from the slight favorites to slight underdogs, and they win by kind of 73-72 after they very nearly gave this game away. They were up 71-58 with about 6:20 remaining. They scored 2 points in the final 6+ minutes, but somehow, some way, they pull it out. Tyler Kolek starting to look better once again, 15 points, 11 assists. For St. John's, they win the rebound battle by far, 41-28. This despite the fact that Joel Soriano was not the man that gave you a double-double. That would actually be Chris Ledlum, and for St. John's, they had a nice performance out of RJ Luis, who was able to go off for 20 points, but for St. John's, they do lose the turnover battle, 13-11, and for Marquette, every single one of their starters was in double figures. So that was another one of those fun ones, and we had ourselves a whole lot of fun out there in the Big 12 as well. Oklahoma, they were able to down Cincinnati on the road by kind of 69-65. This Oklahoma team has really been something to behold thus far this season, as for Oklahoma, they did a nice job tying down Cincinnati from three-point range. 9 of 26 Cincinnati goes, from three-point range. This is an Oklahoma team that now is 11-7 against the spread, by the way. So they've been able to do a solid job on that front. As for Oklahoma, 16 of 18 at the free throw line. Cincinnati, 14 of 22 from the free throw line. Fair to say that was the difference in the game. And for Oklahoma, they went up against a Cincinnati team that has been tremendous on the glass all season long. They win the rebound battle 42-36. So a tremendous performance there. Texas, they take down Baylor. If you laid the late number of 2.5, though, you did not get there. 75-73 final in this one. So Baylor actually improves to 11-5-1 against the spread. Probably doesn't feel like it to them, but for Texas, they go 9 of 19 from three-point range. Baylor goes 11 of 22 from three-point range. This game just barely squeaks over. If you would have gotten, even above average three-point shooting, you would have been able to cash the under. As for Texas, they commit just 7 turnovers in this game. Baylor just 10. This was a little bit of a slow slog of a game, but Tyrese Hunter was able to take it over with his scoring ability. 21 points. Max A-Smith, 15 points, 7 assists, 5 boards. He did a little bit of everything. And then for Baylor, you had Jacoby Walter be able to supply the team with 22 points, going 3 of 7 from three-point range. You saw this as well. Houston gets the win, but no cover by kind of 57-42 in a game where I am not even kidding when I say this. Central Florida, they went 4 of 21 from 3, 3 of 23 from 2, but they went 24 of 33 at the free throw line to be able to cover this game. Houston wins the turnover battle 15-8. They actually played relatively even up on the glass. Central Florida did a solid job being able to grab some boards. Central Florida loses that battle 42-41. But how about LJ Cryer being able to supply 16 points, going 4 of 10 from 3, and then Jabal Shed just continues to do it all. 10 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, 2 turnovers as the main floor general in this one. You've also got Iowa State continuing to cash tickets. They're 12-6 against the spread, 73-72. They take down TCU, and for Iowa State, this really did get hairy. They were up 17 points about midway through the second half, and they were up 71-59 with about 4.5 minutes remaining, and then TCU makes a big giant bonsai charge before Iowa State is able to put them away for good with regards to their defense. This was a game, though, that just barely squeaked over. A lot of places goes this total right around about 144.5 or so, and the reason why Iowa State was able to get the job done because Sean Gilbert was able to give the team 20 big points in this one. Taymon Lipsby was actually out of the fold for Iowa State, them being able to win without him, and that was absolutely massive for a TCU team that lost the turnover battle 27-13. Yeah, needless to say, TCU is going to need to clean that up a little bit, and we were wondering about this Iowa State defense looking pretty darn solid. What is not looking pretty darn solid is having to try to get road wins in general in the Big 12. We did see a few teams be able to pull it off. Kansas, not one of them. 91-85, a West Virginia team that entered 6-11 straight up. They take down the number 3 team in all of college basketball thanks to going 12 of 21 from three-point range. Raekwon Battle, Kirk Kriisa, they combined to go for 38 points. I will say for Kriisa, he did have 6 turnovers in this game. That's a Kirk Kriisa experience for you. But Kevin McCullough, Hunter Dickinson tried to put the team on their back. They combined 43 points. Both gave you 5 assists. And DeJuan Harris, 5 assists, 5 steals with 0 turnovers, but only 4 points. You could use a little bit more there. They did bring in Johnny Furphy in the starting lineup, and he was solid. He gave the team 13 points. Nicholas Timberlake, 12 points off the bench. But for Kansas, just the defense wasn't able to hold up, and they lost the rebound battle 31-22. So saw some very interesting results there. And then a BYU team that is now 12-6 against the spread. They fell to Texas Tech 85-78 after they looked like they had full control of this game. BYU at one point, they were up, I believe it was 17 points. They were up 35-18, and then this game just slid away from them as Pops Isaacs happened. Pops Isaacs goes off in this game for 6 of 9. Very nice 3-point shooting, 32 points. Overall, Texas Tech, they do go 10 of 20 from distance. BYU, 13 of 39 from the outside. You did have Ali Khalifa, by the way, for BYU. He's been pretty dormant thus far this season. 21 points, 7 boards, but they are unable to pull it off. This was a Big 12 day that was absolutely insane. And right now in the SEC, team to beat, in my opinion. You can talk about Kentucky all you want. They somehow, someway don't cover, despite the fact that they get 105 points in this game, 105-96. And the big man who came in, and I am probably going to butcher the name, I do apologize, but Zanamir Ivisic, hopefully I got that correctly, 7'2", freshman out of Croatia, comes in and he's able to go off for a 5 of 7 performance, goes 3 of 4 from 3. Keep in mind he's 7'2", and for Kentucky, they don't cover this game despite going 14 of 25 from 3-point range because Georgia weasels their way back at the free throw line, 27 of 35 for Georgia. Jabari Abdul-Rahim supplies the team with 34 points, and then you were able to get 22 big points out of Silas Demery Jr. So that was a wild result. Auburn just continues to look dominant. They're now 12-6 against the spread, 82-59. They take down Ole Miss, an Ole Miss team that, they were one of the last undefeated teams in all of college basketball, but boy, oh boy, have they fallen on some tough times. It's an Ole Miss team that has now lost 3 out of their last 5 games, and for Ole Miss, 4 of 17 from 3-point range. Auburn, 8 of 18 from distance. Nobody more than 13 points for Auburn in this one, but just a really good team effort in general. And then we did see Missouri just continue to be Missouri. They are now 4-14 against the spread, 79-67. Florida's able to take them down. It's been an underachieving Florida team, but for Missouri, they go on and they shoot 3 of 16 from 3-point range. Shamar Bates did his best. He gave the team 36 points. Problem is, the rest of the team had 31 points, and for Florida, they go 9 of 22 from 3-point range. They were able to have Micah Handgladen go off for 13 rebounds, 10 points in this one. Every single one of their starters goes for double figures, so they're able to get that done. Tennessee over Alabama, 91-71. It's been an Alabama team that's really been all over the place, and Tennessee all of a sudden becoming one of your best over teams in all of college basketball. This is a Tennessee team that has just continued to explode time and time again with regards to their offense. For Tennessee, they go 10 of 28 from 3-point range. Meanwhile, Alabama just 4 of 21 from distance, and for Alabama, they lose the turnover battle 22-7. Just thorough domination from Tennessee, who had Dalton connecting once again. He was able to supply the team with 25 points, and, well, Arkansas, it's been a rough season for them. You got South Carolina now 13-5 against the spread. Arkansas 5-13 against the spread. South Carolina goes on the road and they get the job done in Arkansas, 77-64. As for Arkansas, they allow South Carolina to go 9 of 18 from 3-point range. Arkansas actually wins the turnover battle 10-5, but they lose a rebound battle 39-27, and that's the one place where they should have dominated this game. Draymond Merck for Arkansas, 18 points, but this is a 10-8 Arkansas team that, unless if they really turn it around, they're probably going to be missing the NCAA tournament. Texas A&M looks like they're starting to turn around, 73-69. This was a closing number of, in a lot of places, right around 3, so they were just barely able to get there as well, and a team that they were able to get there not just on the spread, but outright on the money line. How about Pittsburgh? In step-up games, they have been a complete disaster all season long, but they step up in Cameron Indoor Stadium, and they get an 80-76 win over Duke, and Duke shoots 11 of 28 from 3-point range. They lose their turnover battle by kind of 11 to 10, but they weren't too bad there. But Blake Hinson happened. 24 points, 8 rebounds, 7 of 7 from 3-point range. Guys not named Blake Hinson, they go just 3 of 13 from distance for Pittsburgh, but man, was he able to get it done. And for Federico down low, he was able to give you a pair of blocks along with Zach Austin and his trio of blocks. So Pittsburgh, they were up to the task and they get it done. No cover for UConn, but they're able to stave off elimination, which is more than what can be said for a lot of these top 10 teams recently. 66-65. They get the win over Villanova. They close that's right around about 4 to 4.5 point favorites, and the reason why UConn gets the job done is because Tristan Newton, he was able to take over the game. 25 points, 6 boards, 3 assists. Now, UConn, they just weren't able to put the ball in the bucket late, but they had done just enough early to be able to get this win. They win the turnover battle 8-7. They play even up on the glass. As for Villanova, Justin Moore, TJ Bamba, a combined 30 points, but you did have Moore have that late turnover with about 30 seconds remaining in a one-possession game that did prove to be very, very costly. Utah State may or may not be falling out of the polls after they had lost earlier the week against New Mexico, but they were able to restore order. They get a win. They get a cover against Fresno State, this by a count of 83-62, and for Great Osabor, he continues to live up to his aim. He continues to be great. 20 points, 12 rebounds. Utah State wins the rebound battle 40-25, and for Fresno State, they go just 7-25 from 3-point range. That was a little bit less than terrific, and if you're looking out there in the Mountain West, by the way, New Mexico currently finds themselves 13-5 against the spread, and they completely bulldoze Air Force by a count of 85-66. For Air Force, it is going straight down the tubes for this team, as for Air Force, they're now 6-11 against the spread. For Air Force, they lose this game despite the fact that New Mexico only went 4 of 19 from 3-point range, as they got dominated on glass. Bo Becker, Ryan Petratus had 41 of the team, 66 points. And for JT Toppin, 25 points, 13 rebounds for New Mexico. By the way, Wyoming, they are now 5-11 against the spread. They take down a Nevada team that's been so hot recently, but now they lose back-to-back games, 98-93 the final for Wyoming. 13 out of 23 from three-point range. You had Wyoming lose the turnover battle 11-8, but when you're able to go off like that and have Sam Griffin giving you 26 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, that'll certainly fly him for that San Diego State team that had won earlier in the week. They followed the Boise State 67-66 in a relative pick'em game. This was a depends upon the number sort of situation there. A lot of places close this with like Boise State maybe laying a point, being a pick'em, somewhere in that neighborhood, but that was one of the more fun games of the day, and we've hit on most of the top 25 action. I do have to give Purdue its love, though. Purdue, they go on the road and they sap Iowa's 30-game streak of 75-plus points at home, 84-70. Iowa does not score for the final 4.5 minutes in this one for Purdue. Giant of the Earth, Zach Edey, 30 points, 18 rebounds, 4 blocks, and for Iowa, 5 of 17 from three-point range. Iowa actually wins the turnover battle 11-7, but you had Lance Jones chip in there 17 points, 6 boards. Purdue able to thoroughly dominate the glass 50-24. So Purdue, they get a nice win. They get a nice cover. One of the more dominant displays of the day as well. How about Dayton? 96-62 all over Rhode Island. Not quite the same Dayton defense that we've seen in past years, but this offense is certainly cooking with some gas, and it is a Rhode Island team that they've been a little bit up and down with regards to covering spreads, and for Rhode Island, they lose this game by 34 points while going 8 of 20 from three-point range because Dayton went 16 of 27 from distance. Yeah, you saw a lot of overs on Saturday, but you also saw Richmond be able to continue to get the job done. They go on the road in overtime, and they take down Davidson 69-64. Richmond all of a sudden 13-4-1 against the spread, and UMass, by the way, give them a little bit of kudos. They're not 13-5 against the spread themselves out there in the Atlantic 10, but for Richmond, 7-21 from three-point range, top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they win the rebound battle 43-38, so very impressed there. Minnesota's right now your number 1 cover 8 team in all of college basketball at 15-3. They were not in action on Saturday, but who was in action? The number 2 team in all of college basketball with regards to cover 8. Eastern Washington now 12-3-1 against the spread after they put on a masterclass against Idaho State. 79-67 for Eastern Washington, 9 of 16 from 3. They do relinquish on the defensive side of things as Idaho State, they go 11 of 29 from three-point range, and for Eastern Washington, they do turn the ball over 16 times, but Jake Hyman, who began his career over at UCLA, he was able to chip in there 13 points. He goes 3 of 3 from three-point range. And speaking of UCLA, they were able to get a cover against one of your better cover 8 teams in all of college basketball in Arizona, though I will say for Arizona, it's starting to go downhill for them. I believe that they have only covered 2 out of their last 7 spreads, but for Arizona, they were able to stave off elimination. 77-71 was the final. I know that McCrona was not very happy after the game, and I would not be either if my team blew a 19-point lead like UCLA did, as for UCLA, they go 9 of 26 from 3. That's actually a really good shooting performance for them. Arizona just 6 of 26, but for Arizona, there we go 25 of 29 at the charity stripe. UCLA just 12 of 14, and for Arizona, they had Umar Ballo on their side. 17 points, 13 rebounds. Sebastian Mack along with Blazer Stefanovic chip in their 38 points for a UCLA team that's all of a sudden been able to cover 3 straight spreads, but certainly not what they were hoping for there. A team that has also been able to cover some spreads for you. How about the Salukis of Southern Illinois? They are now 13-4 against the spread after they don't get the win, but they get the cover against Northern Iowa by a count of 64-57. This was a closing number in a lot of spots, right around 5.5. Looked like Northern Iowa was going to be able to get it done. They were up 7 with about 2.5 minutes remaining, and Xavier Johnson was a little bit off. He has been a top 5 scorer in all of college basketball this season. 17 points on 18 shots in this one, but for Southern Illinois, they felled Northern Iowa quite a bit, and Northern Iowa went 18 of 31 at the charity stripe. Meanwhile, Southern Illinois 11 of 12 at the free throw line. So always take a look at that free throw shooting. Drake had a 42-7 run in their game against Evansville, an Evansville team that entered 11-7, by the way, 97-48 for Evansville, it's called them Hickory out there in the great state of Indiana because they got smoked. They lose the turnover battle. They get dominated on the board 39-23. And you had for Drake, all but one of their starters be able to register double figures. Tucker DeFries, 11 points, 7 boards, 3 assists. Darnell Brody, a double-double. So that was a very nice showing out there. Another team has been a sneaky cover team has been CSUN. They were 13-3 against the spread going into Saturday. They lost, and they lost big against UC Riverside, though, as it was actually relatively even up at halftime, and then CSUN for the second half, they did not show up, as for UC Riverside, they're able to get this job done by a count of 82-63, and for the CSUN bunch, they got outscored by a count of 51-35 in the second half, and quite frankly, it wasn't that close. At one point, CSUN was down 25 points, and for Riverside, they go 17 of 32 from three-point range. They entered in this game shooting about 30% from distance. Isaiah Moses was feeling it like Moses. 30 points, goes 8 of 11 from three-point range, so a thorough thumping out there. And Troy, the Trojans, they have been one of your better cover A teams in all of college basketball. They take an absolutely brutal loss on Saturday, though, to Southern Miss, 64-63. The final, I believe that Troy closed as a very slight favorite in the spot, and for Troy, they're up 18 points in the second half. They just completely blow it from there, as you did have Christian Eugene chip in their 19 points at Southern Miss. They do it without Andre Cabello in the fold as well, so they will persevere in that one. If you, like me, at Gardner-Webb, by the way, I'll give a shout-out to this bad beat. They were up 18 points in the first half themselves. They lose to Gardner-Webb 79-74 as they got land-based in the second half, getting outscored 49-29. This was just brutal to watch. And for Winthrop, they go 9 of 19 from three-point range, but they lose the battle on the turnovers by a count of 17-15. They lose the battle on the glass 31-30, and for Winthrop, just a lot of stagnant offense in that second half. So that was a little bit less than tremendous to watch. If you're looking at teams that have not been able to cover the spread thus far this season, well, Pacific has certainly been one of them. They are your worst cover A team in all of college basketball, currently standing at 3-15 against the spread. Unfortunately, they were not in action, but the second worst team was in Middle Tennessee, and for Middle Tennessee, they were unable to cover once again. New Mexico is about a 5 to 5.5 point favorite, 73-62 over Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has also been a good under A team. This was a game that went over just because their totals have now been set so low. That's not even funny for Middle Tennessee. 10 of 33 from three-point range. They did get off the bench a 6 of 8 three-point shooting performance out of Trey Green, which means that everyone else on the roster went a combined 4 of 25 from three-point range. And for Middle Tennessee, they lose the turnover battle 15-8. It's just a pretty unrecognizable team right now. And also in Conference USA, UTEP has been a very brutal team against the spread as well. Just 4-11-1, but they do get the job done as very modest, like 1.5 point favorites, 93-87 against Western Kentucky in a game in which these teams runned it and gunned it. For UTEP, they go 7 of 20 from three-point range, and they win the turnover battle 19-14. By the way, Arkansas, getting back to them, they are now 5-13 against the spread. And for Detroit, they are now 5-15 against the spread. They just get completely pulverized by Youngstown State, 105-64. 0-20 right now, and if you take a look since February 28th, that was their last win that they had. They were able to win a game in their conference tournament. Ever since then, they and the Pistons are combined 6 of 77 straight up. It's a Detroit team that just is not getting anything right now. Youngstown State, 14 of 26 from 3, 15 of 15 at the free throw line. Yeah, Marcus Tankersley chip in there 26 points, but that's that for Detroit. Really, really brutal showing. And for IUPUI in that same conference, they're now 5-13 against the spread after they had a triumph a few nights ago against that same Fort Wayne team that has been just all over the place, by the way. They lose to Cleveland State 75-68 on Saturday, but they get just completely crushed by Robert Morris, who went 16 of 32 from three-point range. And for IUPUI, they lose the battle on the glass 24-21. So that was a little bit less than tremendous. If you're looking at top over 8 teams in all of college basketball, Arkansas Pine Bluff, they have been your top team to the over, and they were able to cash in yet another over on Saturday as they give up north of 80 points to Florida A&M. They were able to hold on for a 99-97 win. They don't cover the -5.5, but a Florida A&M team that's been pretty dormant with their offense the last few seasons. They popped off and went 10 of 23 from 3. Meanwhile, Pine Bluff, 15 of 28 from three-point range as old Frenchie Joe French was able to chip in their 21 points. Pardon my French, but he went 5 of 9 from 3-point range. And then Rashad Williams off the bench. He's always got the green light. 6 of 9. Very nice from 3-point range. He was able to chip in there 27 points. So that was happy action, fun time. Kentucky, they are now 14 overs and 3 unders. We went through them a little bit earlier, but pair of teams that you might not expect to be very good to the over. They are. Jacksonville and Wofford have now both played 13 overs to 3 unders. For Wofford, they lose to UNC Greensboro by a count of 82-59. This was a closing total of about 139.5. So this one barely wall scrapes over the total as for UNC Greensboro. They go 8 of 23 from 3-point range, but they were able to win the rebound battle 36-28. And this Wofford team has been just really rough with their defense, to say the least. And then Jacksonville, they were supposed to be a relatively solid defense the last 2 years, and it has went down the toilet bowl for them. And Jacksonville, they lose to Kennesaw State. We give our own to Lane Kiffin go Owls by a count of 83-79. Total was closer to about 158. It's able to go over as for Kennesaw State, they go 9 of 25 for 3. And Jacksonville did their part. They went 10 of 19 from the outside. It's a Jacksonville team that was able to play even up on the glass, and Josiah Powell was able to go for 20 points for Jacksonville in this one. So you're able to get a nice quality over there. In Denver, the old Pioneers, they're now 12 and 4 to the over, as well as they give up north of 90 to North Dakota, 92-78 the final. Tommy Bruner, your top scorer in all of college basketball, goes out for 32 points. He's averaging right around about 25 points per contest. And for Denver, offense has been solid. The defense, boy, it's really lacking. They lose the turnover battle by a count of 8-7, and they lose a rebound battle to a North Dakota team that's really not good on the glass. 48-32 as he had 19 points, 15 rebounds from Amar Kulajovic. So that was interesting to take a look at, to say the least. Alabama now, after that expose that we saw on Saturday, 13 and 5 to the over. Iowa, they're now 13 overs, 5 unders as well. But we also have seen a lot of overs thus far this season from the old Fairfield Stags. We're going to be seeing them in action on Sunday. You also had UT Arlington go to 12 overs and 5 unders thus far this season. They end up playing a little bit more defense on Saturday, but they fall to Abilene Christian. And why UT Arlington was a road favorite in this game, the world may never know, by a count of 78-67. And speaking of unders, your top underrated team in all of college basketball, they keep that moniker. Dartmouth had a north of 7-minute run in the second half where they did not score a single point, getting lambasted by Yale by a count of 76-51. For Dartmouth, Dusan Niskovich was able to chip in there 11 points, but for Dartmouth, 6 of 22 from 3-point range. They went 15 of 52 from the floor with 13 turnovers and lost the rebound battle 42-30. Just absolute sadness there. Another team that's been really good to the under, Western Illinois. 3 overs to just 12 unders for them. Western Illinois, they play host to Tennessee State. They lose by a count of 58-57 in a game where neither team could hit a shot inside the arc. Outside the arc was honestly a different story, as for Western Illinois, they go 6 of 17 from 3-point range. Tennessee State, they go 5 of 11 from 3-point range, but inside the arc, both of these teams shot sub 42%. You had, for this Western Illinois team, just 11 turnovers. They've really been slowing games down, so this has been really interesting to take a look at. And for Vanderbilt, they've actually been quite an under team as well. 13 unders to 5 overs, and they lose to Mississippi State by a count of 68-55. Vanderbilt was about a 12 to a 12.5 point underdog in this one. Depending upon your number, you should have been able to get there with Mississippi State, who they themselves went just 6 of 21 from 3-point range, but Vanderbilt just has been all out of sorts. Ezra Magnon has been doing everything that he can to help out this team, but 3 points, 3 turnovers, that is just not going to cut it, and the team is still with Colin Smith as well, so that's not necessarily too tremendous. And one of our favorites, Mississippi Valley State, they actually aren't one of the top teams to the under thus far this season, just because they have been allowing so many teams to score so many points, and this was another one of those cases. Bethune-Cookman goes on the road as an 8.5 point favorite, and they take it to Mississippi Valley State 80-64 after Mississippi Valley State had 1 point in the first 7.5 minutes of the contest. For Mississippi Valley State, they shoot 29% from the floor. Mercifully, they go 27 of 35 at the free throw line, but 20 turnovers for them. And for Bethune-Cookman, they went 34 of 44 at the free throw line. So boy, oh boy, the refs were really calling some fouls in that one, and we have just had ourselves a tremendous college basketball season. It has been full of ups and downs, and our DK Network write-ups, they just continue to hit. We're up to 45-30 thus far this season as we were on Arizona State in this one. Isaiah Collier got ruled out of this game. No Boogie Ellis, and no shot for a USC team has been pretty sorry against the spread themselves. 82-67 the final for Arizona State. They get it done by shooting just 8 of 26 from three-point range, but good news for them, USC was 4 of 15 from distance with, I don't know about you, but they channeled their inner Taylor Swift and they felt 22. That's the amount of turnovers that USC had in this one. Bronny James, he had 7 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds in the starting lineup, and for USC, they actually win the rebound battle 44-34, but when you're unable to take care of the ball like that, that's typically not great for you. And then Gonzaga, shout out to them, north of a 20-point win against San Diego to be able to get up off the mat and be able to get a cover there. And if you're looking at college basketball right now, over the last 7 days, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, 59.8% of games have went over the total. 201 overs, 135 unders, and I believe that along the way we've gotten something like 10 or so pushes. I mean, it has been absolutely ridiculous. Home underdogs, by the way, are just getting absolutely destroyed. 45, 60, and 2 against the spread over the last 7 days. Favorites as a whole, they're only hitting at 50.9%. Favorites at home have been just really going cold as road teams are hitting at 53.7% over the last 7 days. So this has been a very interesting landscape in college basketball. Meanwhile, if you take a look at the entirety of the college basketball season, home team still hitting at 50.6%, but home underdogs now 386, 395, and 15 against the spread. This has been quite startling, to say the least. And what else is startling? Overs now overall for the season hitting at 52% in college basketball. When you got north of 3,000 results like this, and bookmakers know that people like to play overs, this is really a developing story. 1,588 overs, so 1,467 unders. So that's what we saw in college basketball on Saturday, and that's what we're getting trend-wise. Coming next, we do have to recap some of these results that we saw from Saturday and turn it forward to Sunday with our good friend Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man as Rob Donaldson. He does great work with his show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets Show. If you go to youtube.com/Rob Donaldson, you're able to catch all of his work over there. He does a tremendous job on so many fronts. Was doing a great job in college was doing a great job in college football all season long. Now it's all about college basketball with him, and I know he's also doing a great job taking a look at all that we're getting in the NFL playoffs as well. To be able to follow Rob on Twitter/X, that is at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, always great to hop on with you. And right now we're in the midst of sweating out a bunch of Saturday games, and it's obviously a loaded slate as it is every single Saturday. And it's fun. It's daunting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, and you just got to love the emotions that sports betting can bring out of you.
Absolutely. And it was a very, very wild Saturday. And I just want to get your thoughts first as to anything that stood out to you, because we had everything from Kansas losing on the road to Morgantown, that triple overtime game involving Seton Hall and Creighton. I mean, you're just able to go down the list of absolutely crazy results. But was there anything in particular that really did stand out to you, to the positive or the negative?
It's just a lot of great games. Like you said, there were a lot of comebacks. I mean, St. John's, Marquette was a great game. Iowa State TCU was a great game, Creighton Seton Hall. And that's what the time frame that we're in right now, where we're going to get a lot of great games in conference play. And that's the greatest equalizer in the sport, is just kind of having a familiar opponent in front of you, familiar coaches that you've known and gotten acclimated to over the years, and just producing really great basketball. So although a team like Kansas, who steps into Morgantown at 15-2, is taking on a West Virginia team that has looked really awful in spots, it's going to start to even out in terms of the playing field and the discrepancies and how much of a drastic difference there is in terms of these teams and how good they are. When you're getting lines like that, whether it goes above 5, 6, or 7, or all the way up into double digits, you got to be really wary about laying those points on the road.
Yeah, I do think so as well. And when it comes to the Big 12, I do think that it's even more difficult this year with the conference realignment, because now you're going to have trips to Utah. You're going to be having trips to the great state of Florida. Has that been something that you've been factoring in with regards to some of these conferences, with regards to expansion? Because I actually do think that with things being more spread out and these road trips being a little bit more daunting, that it actually does provide an even bigger boost to home teams. And they already, in my opinion, had a very big advantage to start out with.
It's something that I haven't really figured out a stone cold way of kind of implementing into my handicapping, because like you said, who knows what we can kind of expect with UCF or a BYU or a Cincinnati stepping in. I think Cincinnati has surprised a lot of people. I think UCF has surprised even more people with just that comeback win against Texas on the road. Then they beat Kansas at home, and they go out and they do get trumped by Houston. But I mean, you talk about an absolute gauntlet that they're going through that they've never really had in the last decade. And they're playing really well. And how do you account for that? I'm not really sure, other than maybe Johnny Dawkins is a great coach. And that's something that, we knew from just kind of watching him over at UCF over the years. But it's a different aspect to kind of consider. And it's a tough one to actually figure out how much you want to factor it in.
Yep, it really is difficult, but I do think that it's one of those things where I don't think that there's much debate as to it helping out some of these home teams. The question is, how much is it helping out these home teams? That's joining me on the show. We do have Rob Donaldson. He does a great job with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bet Show. And Rob, I know that you're a little bit of an Iowa fan. I do need to discuss this with you. For the first time in 30 true home games at Carver Hawkeye Arena, Iowa was held below 75 points. Purdue, they got the win, they got the cover. And for Purdue, how do you gauge this team? Because there's so much debate as to who should be number one, and I think it just is depending upon the day. I think it's depending upon the matchup as well, because I think that there's a lot of teams that are able to stake a claim for our number one. Purdue came into the week at number two, but I thought that this was a relatively impressive display from a Purdue bunch that we remember last year they were able to win a lot on the road, but they weren't able to cover. But this year it feels like they put those demons behind them and they're winning much more comfortably on the road in a Big Ten where it's very difficult to win on the road.
Yeah, and this is just an experienced group with a coach that has been there, done that, and Purdue regular season success and domination isn't, something that's unsurprising or surprising to us at all. And even over the last 3 or 4 road games they've played in the Big Ten, they've won by double digits. So to kind of feed into your point of they're making it look a lot easier this year as opposed to maybe last year where they had some nail biters, I 100% agree with you. And I do think that kind of factors in is that the Big Ten feels a little bit down this year for whatever reason in terms of the middle and the lower end of the spectrum. This conference over the years has been packed, whether it's from, the top 2 and then them being clumped together and then having an 8-team window where everybody is playing tight games every single night. Well, now it kind of feels like there's a clear hierarchy that's kind of forming in that top 4 or 5. And then there's a bunch of other teams that have just been really unimpressive, in my opinion. And so I think there's going to be a lot more variance and a lot of easier road spots as opposed to years past.
Yep, I do think so as well. And that leads us into the fact that we do have a pair of Big Ten games that are going to be going on Sunday. As a matter of fact, Sunday morning. And the first of those is Michigan State versus Maryland. Michigan State between about a 2 to 2.5 point favorite, with that total hovering around about a 134. So how do you take a look at a matchup like this involving a pair of teams that are 11-7? And I'm sure a lot of people put a little bit more weight into Michigan State's 11-7 rather than Maryland's. But as we know, College Park, a very difficult place to play. And this is a Maryland team that that they're going to play great defense, and that the offense is probably going to leave something to be desired.
Yeah, and that's the balance when you're taking a team like Maryland, right, where you're hoping this game is played in the 60s at most. And with Michigan State, I really do think that they got some of their earlier road lumps out of the way. And although I do think that they're clearly the bigger name and they've had a lot of steam behind them over the past couple months here, or at least the last 4 or 5 weeks, I do think they're going to end up getting this thing done. And Maryland is a team I'm just not bought into. I know that they're 11-7 right now. They have Kevin Willard. They have a lot of reputation, and College Park is a great place and home environment, which on the weekend is going to be packed. But Michigan State, to me, is going to be one of those teams that really establishes themselves in the Big Ten over the next month here. And it's kind of a pick'em spot-ish line. I'm going to lay it there with Michigan State and feel pretty good about it.
I wouldn't want to go much more than a 2 personally, but I'm right there with you. I feel like Michigan State was hurt by a lot of bad shooting variance at the beginning part of the season, because if you look at their numbers since really that Baylor game towards like late November, early December, since then, they have been that team that we saw last season that was number 3 in the country with regards to 3-point shooting percentage, and I do feel like that was maybe a little bit of an outlier last season. That said, I do think that this is a squad that should be able to get the job done on the road, and I do think that the most intriguing Big Ten game of the day on Sunday is going to be the return of Terrence Shannon for Illinois as they play host to Rutgers with a line of about 13.5 and a total of 143 to 143.5. And I want to get your thoughts on this one just because with Terrence Shannon coming back, long term, I think that that's good for Illinois. But when these guys come back, game number one, honestly, I don't award too much of a boost for these guys coming back until they reacclimate themselves with their teammates, until they really do get a little bit of a lather, until they are able to just get on the same page with one another. I don't know how you gauge these sort of spots, but I will be upgrading Illinois a little bit more moving forward, but I don't necessarily do so for game number one, and I see a little bit of an edge to both the under and Rutgers as a result in this spot.
I'm 100% with you, and this is actually something that if you go back to one of the shows we did all the way in the preseason when we were talking about the transfer portal, we kind of talked about how do you view teams that bring in a lot of transfers and have a lot of new additions. And the concept there and the thinking there in terms of my framework is, when you have a bunch of talented guys, sometimes they're more individually based rather than a cohesive unit. And we've already seen it in season with teams like West Virginia, who just because they added a bulk of a talent right off the bat because of the waiver approvals didn't make them a better team. In fact, they actually flatlined and were getting crushed left and right over the past month up until the past couple of weeks when they had Texas and Kansas at home and they were able to pick them off. But it was a really dire stretch there for West Virginia. And you even look at a team like we talked about with USF, South Florida. That was a team that basically inherited Kennesaw State and really went through some hard times in the early goings as well, despite having a better coach potentially and a lot of array of talent being added. And so similar concept here where Illinois was rolling without Terrence Shannon for a good bit. They were playing cohesive. They were playing good basketball, and there wasn't really a lot of individuals just trying to play hero ball. And now they're adding in a ball-dominant guard to the fray. How does that affect this team? I think in the long run, it's going to pay off. But in the short term, I'm right there with you. I like Rutgers, and I think Illinois is a little bit of a fadeable just based on perception right now.
And what was interesting about Illinois as well is that they've played much better defense when Terrence Shannon has been in the fold, but their offense was looking much better as well, which does lead me a little bit more to the under with the Rutgers team that they do a tremendous job typically on defense and the offense. Well, that has been leaving a heck of a lot of something to be desired. As joining me on the show, we do have Rob Donaldson. He does absolutely amazing work over at the Rob's Best Bet Show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we do have some interesting spots that are on the board for Sunday. Not the biggest slate, but it's a fun one. And I just feel like, once again, we're getting a spot where Florida Atlantic is being overvalued. They're a 16-point favorite on the road against UTSA. A UTSA team that, by the way, just got completely flattened in their last game against Tulsa. They just caught a falling knife, in my opinion, as Tulsa could not miss from three-point range. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this game, but I think Florida Atlantic, they should be a double-figure favorite. There's no question about it, but I just feel like 16 has gone a little bit too far, and Florida Atlantic, despite the fact that they've gotten the job done outright in so many games in the American, they have yet to cover a spread, and I feel like this is just another one of those classic cases where this number should probably be like 13 to 14, but that name brand of them making the Final Four is causing for them to be about a point or two overvalued in the market.
I'm right there with you, and if it was a different opponent, I would be more inclined to want to bet this game in terms of just kind of fading that big name brand in Florida Atlantic. But UTSA is an interesting squad for people who haven't really watched them this year because they are extremely high variance. They can score points in abundance. They can just try to shuck up threes the entire game and flatline. This is a weird team to bet on, and because of this number, it does kind of give you a little bit of edge towards betting UTSA because of the backdoor potential and just the potential for them to come out firing out the gates. But I am also a little bit weary that they could also flatline against a Florida Atlantic team that got punched in the mouth early in that Wichita State game last time out and then really had to storm back. Can that happen 2 games in a row where they just start really slow and need to come back and pull off some miracles? Maybe, but I do think that UTSA is just too high variance for me to back that side in this game.
Yeah, it's a Florida Atlantic team that they've been able to do a tremendous job on offense, but you can tell that this defense just has not been the same that it has been in past years. And on Sunday, we always get like those 1 or 2 Pac-12 games, and this might be the most competitive game of the day, sans the very early one between Michigan State and Maryland, and that'd be this Oregon versus Utah game. Utah is a 5-point favorite, totals between 152.5 and 153, and in a normal spot, I would feel like this is a relatively fair line, but with Oregon, in the second half of the back-to-back on the Mountain Road Trip, which I actually used to work at the official affiliate station of Oregon. I can tell you that Mountain Road Trip in the Pac-12, it is absolutely no joke. I just feel like this is a really bad spot for an Oregon team that I could just absolutely see them running out of steam in the second half. I'm not sure how you feel about this one, but even with Oregon being able to get back guys like Folly Dante and company, I have my question marks with them having to go to Utah in this spot in a Sunday afternoon game.
I'm 100% with you, and I am all over Utah in this matchup. I mean, I think you nailed the analysis, too, in terms of just kind of talking about the Mountain Road Trip and Oregon potentially running out of gas in the second half. And the reason why I think you nailed it is it literally just happened last game against Colorado, where Oregon actually took a lead early in that second half period, despite trailing for most of the first half. And then out of nowhere, they just kind of flatlined, couldn't score, looked gassed, and Colorado ended up pulling away either a 10-point or an 8-point type of winner. I think the same thing is going to happen here with a Utah team that is very comfortable playing at home and a very tough customer as well. So I'm all over Utah. I think they can extend this out to potentially even, a blowout territory of 15-20.
Yeah, I set my line closer to an 8 on this one as well. So being able to lay a 5, I am certainly going to be all over that. And we do have a pretty interesting slate for the Sunday. We hit a lot of the marquee games, but as we know, we always get the Metro Atlantic going down. And for those that love NEC basketball, well, this is a day for you as well. Anything else that you're going to be taking a look at on the slate for Sunday?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at that Wichita State-South Florida matchup because last time out, Wichita State played an absolute great game and then just kind of fell apart at the end in the second half against Florida Atlantic. And on the other side, South Florida started off awful against Memphis and had an amazing second half, catapult them over a winning, top 10 team. That's where this matchup, I think, is going to be really interesting, in my opinion. But both teams just expended a lot of energy. I'm looking at that under of 150.5, and I think it could soar under with just a lot of, drained guys on the court. So that's definitely an angle that I'm really liking for Sunday.
Yep, and we're starting to see this get to 151 in a few spots as well. And this is a total that at that 151, it's starting to be my buy point on the under as well. I don't see as much of an edge, but I do feel like we're starting to get a little bit too far, and it's going to be fascinating to see how South Florida responds in this matchup as well against the Wichita State bunch. They've been a little bit all over the place. It's been rough for Wichita State in the American, but a lot of their losses, they have been closer losses, and they did have that lead over FAU in the last game before they relinquish it in the second half. And a man that never relinquishes, a man that does absolutely tremendous work, that'd be you, Rob. I know that you're doing a tremendous job taking a look at the NFL playoffs, but this is your time of year to be able to shine in college basketball, and you do a tremendous job of it. So let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
And appreciate you, Greg, for always having me on. It's always a blast to talk some college ball, especially when we're not just talking about, the high marquee matchups. We can dive into things like Siena Marist and Wichita State, South Florida, and all these other fun games. And for those who are wanting to follow my picks on a day-to-day basis, you can do so on Twitter or X at RobDFB. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, just Rob Donaldson. As always, Greg, I appreciate having me on.
Always love having Rob aboard. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. His insights are unparalleled, and every single time he joins this show, both brings good analysis and some really good picks as well. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always good to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. His insights are unparalleled. He does such an incredible job day in and day out, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love, and every single time he joins this podcast, it's always a pleasure. So big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter /X feed at GN_D1. we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is merely where we go with the bigger conferences first, and then the smaller conferences are all the NEC games. So sorry, fans of the NEC, but those are the games that get listed on the extra games board. Those are going to be the ones at the bottom. Everything else is pretty much in time order. So let's waste no more time and get into it with 8:29, 8:30 on the betting board. Maryland plays host to Michigan State. Michigan State does find themselves as 2 to 2.5 point favorites. Totals anywhere between 134 and 134.5. Open up at a 133.5. This has gone up just slightly, and I do agree with the move. I did make my total 134.5, so you're at a 134. It's my max buy point on the over, but I'm going to be looking at the over. Both of these teams are top 50 defenses in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Maryland has just been brutal with their three-point shooting all season long. A bottom 35 team with regards to three-point shooting percentage. I'm not convinced they're quite as terrible of a three-point shooting team as they have been this season. Like, once again, I'm not saying that they're great. I'm not saying that this team should be shooting like 40% from three-point range or anything like that, but I still do think they're better than 27.9%. As a matter of fact, your top two players that made threes, and Jameer Young along with Dante Scott, do combine shoot north of 34% from three, and Young, I do think is going to keep Maryland lively in this game. 21 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, steal and a half per contest. He's been able to do a rock solid job, and this is a Maryland team that they do a nice job of running teams off the three-point line in terms of percentage of shots that they allow from three-point range. They're actually a top 25 team in the country with that regard, but this is a Michigan State team that has a very good do-it-all scorer in Ty Walker that's able to do a nice job being able to get to the cup. He's giving you 20-plus points per contest for a Michigan State team that does a nice job taking care of the ball. Only about 10.5 turnovers per game. This is a bunch that they don't generate a lot of steals, going up against a Maryland team that has been a top 50 bunch in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I don't think that they're going to get as many turnovers in this spot, and this is a Michigan State team that they do struggle a little bit more with their defense on the road. They are giving up about 21.7 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. What I think is going to be key for Michigan State, though, is being able to do a solid job of playing even up on glass. Julian Reese for Maryland has been able to do a solid job being able to give this team 9+ rebounds per game, and it's a Maryland team that overall they're not a great rebounding team, they're not a bad rebounding team, about 131st in all of college basketball with this regard. Michigan State, they're more around 92nd. Maddie Sissoko has been a little bit inconsistent, but like what I've seen out of him recently, you've gotten some good production as well out of Malik Hall. About 11 points, 5 boards, isn't shooting it from three-point range the way that he did in past years, but now has been able to achieve 6+ rebounds in each of the team's last 3 games, has had double figures in 4 of the last 5 games as well, so he's been able to come to the forefront for this bunch with Michigan State. The offense has looked much better recently, being able to get to at least 73 points in 4 of their last 5 games, and to the credit of Maryland, they have been able to do a little bit of a more solid job with regards to their offense, getting to at least 69 points in their last 2 games, and both of those games were on the road. I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a nip and tuck game. I do think that Michigan State, a squad that really was brutal from three-point range for 6 or so games of the season, ever since the beginning of the month of December, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. They get just enough open looks, and I do think that Ty Walker going to match Jameer Young and then the guys around him, lead Michigan State to victory. I did set Michigan State as a favorite of 2.5 points, so 2 is the maximum willing to lay, but going to be willing to lay despite the fact that this is an early game. I did set my total at 134.5. This is going to be a noon Eastern time tip, looking at the over at a 134 less, and willing to lay 2 with Michigan State. Now we have my DK Network write-up pick. This is 831, 832 on the betting board. Illinois plays those for Rutgers. Rutgers is an underdog of 13.5 points. Total between 143 and 143.5. My write-up is going to be on the under. I did set my total at a 136. You've got a Rutgers team that just has not been good with their offense. They're shooting less than 30% from three-point range, entering into Saturday at bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball. They are ranked 300th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, and while Illinois is going to be getting Terrence Shannon back in the fold, I mean, that's massive from an offensive perspective. 21.5 points, 4.5 boards, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Where he might actually be making a bigger contribution is on defense, as Illinois allowed teams to score 71+ points in 4 of the 6 games that he missed, and without him in the fold, the team was surrendering 15.4 points more per 100 possessions than when he was in the fold. So I do think that that is of significance, because this Illinois team does a good job of being able to rebound by committee. Now with Shannon back in the fold, each of your top 6 scorers give you at least 4.3 rebounds per game. That is significant, going up against a Rutgers team that does have Cliff Omarui in the fold, and he has been tremendous down low. 10 points, 9.5 boards, 3.5 blocks per game for a Rutgers team that does rank in the top 10 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, the one thing that must be said about this Rutgers team is that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they give up 25 more points per 100 possessions in a roadside neutral court environment, but this is an Illinois team that gets a little bit loose with it. They're going up against a Rutgers squad that is 26th in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Illinois, about 11.5 turnovers per game, but the first time these two teams played, Rutgers lost at home by a count of 76-58. Shannon was the top scorer in that game, 23 points. Team did commit those 17 turnovers in that game, and with Illinois trying to reacclimate Shannon back in the fold, I do think that there could be some bumps in the road. Game number 1. Now, Coleman Hawkins, all sorts of versatility for Illinois, 11.5 points, 6 boards at 6'10", letting it fly at about a 37.5% clip from three-point range, and when it comes to this Rutgers team, Muwat Mogg coming back in the fold, he's been able to give you about 9.5 or so points per contest. That is of significance as well. I do think that this is going to be a Rutgers team that's going to be able to do an okay job of being able to generate some turnovers. Derek Simpson has not necessarily been too tremendous on the offensive side of things, but has been able to give you some nice plus defense. And then you've got Marcus Domask, who is able to take a little bit more hold of the offense for Illinois. When Shannon is in the fold, he's been averaging more around about 11 or so points per contest. Without Shannon, he had to do what he was doing over at Southern Illinois. He was giving you 16 plus points. He was chipping in there 5 plus rebounds. He was doing a little bit of everything, and this is an Illinois team that, when Shannon has been in the fold, they are a top 15 team nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. If you combine when he was in and when he was out of the fold overall, it's an Illinois team that's hovering more around about 26th, 27th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but clearly an Illinois team that does a better job with their defense at home rather than in a roadside neutral court environment, giving up about 16.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are in their friendly confines. So very interesting situation here. I did set my total at a 136. I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and I think that Illinois is going to be able to win this game, and I think that they win this game by a relatively decent margin, but I do think that there's going to be a few bumps with Shannon being back in the fold. So my write-up here is on the under, set my total 136, set my line at 12, so going to be willing to take 13 plus here with Rutgers as well. 833, 834 on the betting board. Memphis hits the road face off against Tulane, and Tulane does find themselves as home underdogs of 3 points. Total on this game is 168, and I did set my total at a 165.5. So here at a 168, I did think that we've gone a little bit too far. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. These are two teams that, without question, they're going to be looking to push the tempo quite a bit. You've got a Memphis team that does rank in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game, and then you've got a Tulane team that ranks in the top 10 with this regard. It's been absolutely significant what we've been seeing in terms of the tempo of both of these teams, but that said, I do think that we've went just a little bit too far on this one, as you do have a Tulane team that they've had to slow down just a little bit in conference play. They've been benefited a little bit by overtime in terms of being able to hit a few of these overs as well. So I do look at that as being something to really take note of. It's a Memphis team that is hit or miss as well from three-point range. You know what you're going to be able to get out of Davy Jones. He's been able to give you 21 plus points per contest, chipping in there about 6 boards, shooting it well from three-point range. And then Javon Quinnerly, he's been able to do a solid job of being able to give you north of 4 assists per contest, but it is still a Memphis team that serves the ball over 13 times per contest. It is a Tulane team that's only about 6.5 deep as well. For a team that plays that up-tempo, sometimes they do run out of steam a little bit. Now, Kevin Cross has been very significant for this team. A 6'8", do-it-all sort of player has been able to do a tremendous job of being able to give the team right around 18 plus points per contest, shipping in their 6 boards, giving you right around about 4 assists per contest as well. So love what he's been able to do. And then the guy that gets a little bit underlooked, and a guy that I really do like, is Sion James. He's been able to give you about 14 points, 2.5 assists, nearly 2 steals for a Tulane team that, out of their top 4 scorers, every one of them do give you at least 1.6 steals per contest. It is a squad that is able to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range overall as well. So I like what I'm seeing out of them, and you've been able to get a lot more out of Jalen Forbes as well. Someone that was struggling towards the beginning part of the season, but now has been able to kick it into high gear, 15.5 points per contest, has been able to give the team 12 plus points in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. So he's been able to do a nice job picking up the slack. What has been hurting this team is being without Trey Williams, though, a guy that was giving you 9.5 points per contest. So we've been seeing a lot more out of Greg Glenn, and I do think that that's going to be a difference maker here for a Memphis team that I would like to see a little bit more out of some of those ancillary guards, like a Caleb Mills, giving you only about 8 points per contest, being able to shoot 37% from 3, but feels like he should be chipping in there a little bit more. And Naquan Tomlin, he's been able to do a solid job being able to give the team a mid-30s three-point shooting percentage. Has shot it much better from three-point range than he ever did at Kansas State. He's been able to chip in their 9+ points in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. But this is a Memphis team that I do fear that they're not going to dominate the way that you'd like on the glass. Memphis only about 163rd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but this is a Tulane team that they themselves don't necessarily have a lot of size down low. As a matter of fact, they're 324th down low. I do think that Memphis has just enough with that size to be able to get it done. So I did set my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the 3 in. Did set my total 165.5. I certainly think that you're going to get an up-tempo game, but I think we went just a little bit too far here. So going to be looking at the under and willing to lay up to 3 with Memphis. 835, 836 on the betting board. It is Canisius, and then at the road, they're facing off against Peacocks of St. Peter. St. Peter's a 4.5 point favorite. Your total on this game anywhere between 132.5 and 133. And with St. Peter's, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points. So north of 4, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Canisius. This is a Canisius squad that has been one of the better 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, and I really like what you're able to get out of your big 2 for this team. I always say this guy's name, but you've been able to have Siam Utanjal along with Trey Dinkins doing a very solid job of both being able to give you 13+ points per contest. With these 2 guys, they're combining to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. Now, it is a Canisius team that they do turn the ball over about 13.5 times per game. That is something that is of concern, but that said, I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to win the battle on the glass. You do have a St. Peter's team that does rank in the top 30 nationally in terms of percentage of misses that do result in an offensive rebound, so they have been solid there, but you do have someone in Frank Mitchell on the side of Canisius who's been able to give you about 10 points, 10 rebounds per contest. He has been tremendous with that regard. This is a St. Peter's team that also shoots below 32% from 3-point range himself, so they're going to be unable to take advantage with that regard. Now, I will say this about St. Peter's. They're one of the best teams in the country at being able to force turnovers at home. They're forcing a turnover on about 24.3% of possessions. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball when it comes to home games and home games alone. And this is a Canisius team that, despite the fact that they do have Mitchell in the fold, they are about 260th in the country with regards to defensive rebound rate. So that is going to be a little bit of an issue. That said, what else is an issue for the St. Peter's team is just not having that one ancillary scorer that is able to really help things out with regards to having someone like a Michael Hoagie giving you about 10.5 points in the neighborhood about 6 boards per contest. That helps out a little bit, but we're in St. Peter's team. In terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, they are 308th in all of college basketball, only shooting 30.6% from 3-point range when they're at home. And this is a Canisius team that has done a good job of being able to travel with their outside shooting. They shoot 35% from 3-point range away from home. As a matter of fact, that's actually a little bit better than how they shoot at home. And with St. Peter's as well, they do have quite a bit of a tough time hanging on to the ball, despite the fact that they're a team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. They're turning it over right around 13 times per contest. You do have guys like a Latrell Reed, Corey Washington, who have been able to give you a combined about 10 or so rebounds per game. They're combining for about 25.5 points per contest, which that's maybe help out the team a little bit, but I do take a look at this spot. I do think that Canisius going to be able to hold in there. I do think that even though their defensive rebound rate is not necessarily the world's greatest, they're going to be able to do a nice job locking it down from the perimeter. This is a Canisius team that, with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, has been a top 100 team all season long, and I do think that they're going to do a nice job against a St. Peter's team that's had a tough time being able to make their threes all year. So it is a circumstance where I set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to take the 4.5 that I'm seeing right now with Canisius, and that's up my total at a 134. This is a Canisius team that I think is going to be able to go on the road, drill a few shots, and I do think that you get some late game fouling. And this is a St. Peter's team that, they're a little bit hit or miss at the free throw line. They've actually shot better on the road rather than at home with regards to their free throws. So it is a circumstance where I'm going to be looking at the over at a 133.5 or less, and I'm going to be willing to take north of 4 here with Canisius. 837, 838 on the betting board. South Florida plays us Wichita State. Wichita State is an underdog of 4.5 points. 150.5 to 151 is your total. I know that Rob Donaldson is going to be on the under in this spot, and now that we're getting to a 151, I'm going to be looking at the under as well. I did set my total at a 150.5. This is a Wichita State squad that's been a little bit all over the place with regards to their defense. Wichita State, in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, has actually not been too bad, as they're allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range right about a 32.5%, which you're going to take that in. This has been a South Florida team that has been quite upstart with regards to their defense. They're a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I will say for Wichita State, they have been getting gash in recent games. That game that they played against Memphis last week, that did completely throw off their metrics both offensively and defensively, as Wichita State now about 187th at all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but in a road/neutral-court environment, only allowing 0.3 of a point more per 100 possessions rather than at home. And this is South Florida bunch that has been heat up quite a bit from three-point range after a rough start to the season. You've got Chris Youngblood, who last season when he was playing for Amir Abdul-Rahim, and he followed him over to South Florida after they both were at Kennesaw State Owls last season. He's been able to give you about 15 points per contest, had a rough go of it from three-point range to begin the year, but South Florida as a whole, going into December, they were like a bottom 30 team with regards to three-point shooting percentage. Ever since then, they have been shooting north of 37% from distance, but I do think that they get cooled down a little bit here. It's a Wichita State team that I think is going to be able to win the battle on the glass. For South Florida, you only have one player, and that would be Kashawn Pryor, that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Dallin Original has been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per contest. Kenny Poto, along with Quincy Ballard, have also been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game, and I do like the ancillary pieces that you've got around Kobe Rogers for this Wichita State team. For Rogers, 16 points on 40.5% three-point shooting, but Pernell Beverly gives you like 9.5 points, 3.5 assists, does an okay job of taking care of the ball. 12.5 turnovers for a Wichita State team that's a little bit more up-tempo. I think it's solid, and South Florida has been pushing a little bit more pace as well. They're back in the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team, as you haven't been able to get quite a bit recently out of Kobe Knox. Knox had a trio of games in which he was able to go off for double figures, and then in that last game against Memphis, he was a no-show as well, so he's been hit or miss. Was hoping for a little bit more out of Jose Blazer, who's been only able to give you about 6.5 points per contest. It's a South Florida team that does a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. And for South Florida, to their credit, 75 points of fear surrendered in each of their last 5 games, so I do feel like this total has went a little bit too far. I know that Wichita State has given up north of 85 in 3 of their last 5 games, but again, that Memphis game that we saw was one of the biggest outliers of the entirety of the season. I think that things calm down here with regards to their three-point shooting variance. It's on my line at a 2.5 for South Florida. I'm going to be willing to take 4.5 with Wichita State. Fully recognize that this team is riding a 6-game losing streak, but they've been able to cover a few of these games recently. They also had to play Kansas in the time span as well, and I do think that this is a byproduct of the very tough competition that they've been playing. So we'll take north of 3 with Wichita State, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under 839, 840 on the betting board. Fairfield hits the road face-off against Manhattan. Manhattan does find themselves as an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points. Your totals between 147 and 147.5. Manhattan as an underdog of 7 points, so seeing mostly 6.5 out there, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Fairfield. Fairfield has turned themselves into a top 150 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They canned their coach Jay Young just before the start of the season, and for Fairfield, they have found a nice diamond in the rough with freshman Jasper Floyd. He's not necessarily a tremendous scorer with about 9.7 points per contest, but 4.5 assists, 2.3 steals. He's been able to do a really nice job on the glass as well. He's a team top rebounder with 5.8 rebounds per game. Now, that could be a little bit of a kryptonite for this Fairfield team. They are a below average rebounding team, but it's not like they're going up against some Manhattan team that's completely battened down the hatches with regards to the glass. 315th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. It is a Manhattan squad that has just been really struggling to score as well. For Manhattan, they have not broken the 70-point plateau here in the month of January, and for that matter, this is a Manhattan team that in regulation, because their game against Mount St. Mary's, that went to overtime, they have not been able to exceed the 71-point plateau against a Division I opponent all season long. So that's a bit of an issue. You've been able to get some relatively good production with about 13 points out of Shaquille Bender. Bender from three-point shoots about 36% from the outside, but Manhattan as a whole shooting 39.5% from the floor, 30% from 3, 14 turnovers per game. This is a bottom 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, while also being in the bottom 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Both of these teams are relatively equal in the amount of steals that they're able to generate, but that's about it. I do think that this is a Fairfield team that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with it on the road, but that said, for Fairfield, they've been doing a much better job defensively as well. They've now given up fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Certainly the offense has been a little bit more of their forte this season, but they're really rounding into form on both sides of the ball. They're only giving up about 3.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, so I do think that Fairfield should be able to get it done. Question becomes, can Manhattan be able to do their part with regards to this total? And I think the answer is no. I set my total at 147, so you're at 147. 47.5, looking at the under, and with Fairfield, willing to lay up to 6.5 with them. 841, 842 on the betting board. It is Iona hitting the road face-off against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is a 1.5 point favorite. Your total is 147.5. With Quinnipiac, I did make them a 4 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 with Iona. This is a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against a Quinnipiac team that has been turning the ball over right around 12.5 times per contest, but this is also a Quinnipiac team that their top 5 scorers, every single one of them, shoot at least 36% from 3-point range, and they do have a point guard at Savion Lewis that is in the top 5 nationally with regards to assists per game. 8.5 points, 7.5 assists on 42% 3-point shooting, with Matt Blonich along with Amari Tice being really good scorers for this team. Tice, along with Paul Otinho, have been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game. Tice, 12 points on 36% 3-point shooting, and Blonich shoots it at nearly 38.5% from the outside, 19 points per game, and I do think that that's going to be hard for Iona to match up with, as Eden Chertout has been able to do a solid job for this Iona team, chipping in there about 13.5 points per game, but this is just not a vintage Tobin Anderson offense. This has been an Iona team that has been a little bit stronger on the defensive side of things, because the transfer from Cal and Joel Brown, he only gives you about 6.5, 7 points per contest, but chips in there 2 steals. He's been able to give you 3.5 assists per contest, and this is an Iona team that has been able to do a relatively solid job defensively. They're about 129th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a Quinnipiac team that's about 113th with this regard, and with Quinnipiac being able to have a bunch of guys that hit the glass, I do think that that's going to be tough for this Iona team. Now, the good news for Iona is that they were without Osborne Chema, their 7-footer, and legitimately the only player that saw a minute last season for Iona back at the full, but they're still 277th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. It's a Quinnipiac team that's right around 64th with this regard. It is Iona team that they do a lot of little things relatively solid in terms of taking care of the ball, but they also shoot 65% at the free throw line. In a little bit of a nip and tuck game, you do have to have your trepidations there, though they are getting a bit more of Jeremiah Quigley, who's been able to shoot about 42% from 3 assists, 8.5 points per game. I like the way that he's been able to rise up, but I do think that with Quinnipiac having so many guys with versatility with this Quinnipiac team, just doing a nice job locking down opponents as well. They've given up now 70 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. They had to play against Florida, which they got gashed. Ever since then, they've been pretty rock solid there. I do think that this Bobcats team should be able to get the job done at home. Feels like Iona's being a little bit overvalued just based on the name brand, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Quinnipiac, set them as a 4-point favorite, and with this total, I did set it at a 146 with the way that Quinnipiac has been able to play some solid defense. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with the Bobcats, 843, 844 on the betting board. Mount St. Mary's is playing us to Niagara. Niagara finds themselves as underdogs of 6 at 6.5 points, 148 to 148.5 is your total. Did set my total at 148.5. Here at the 148, I'm looking at the over. These are two teams that traditionally they are in the bottom 50 in terms of total possessions per game. The Mount is now a top 150 team in terms of total possessions per game. Niagara is still not super fast. They're still outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, but you also have a Niagara team that's not been playing a whole heck of a lot of defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This Niagara team, they are well outside the top 275. As a matter of fact, they are 305th, and strangely for Niagara, they're actually giving up 11.1 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/shoot-record environment rather than at home. And they go up against a Mount St. Mary's team that at home, they're a bottom 25 team in all of college basketball taking care of the ball. So I did set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Niagara. And this is also a Niagara team that's really been able to bomb it from 3-point range. They are shooting 39.4% as a collective. Every one of their players that has made at least 1 3 and is currently in the full, because right now they are dealing with a little bit of an injury to Malik Edwards. He has only played 5 games thus far this season. So everyone that has made at least 1 3 and is averaging north of 1.5 points per contest is all shooting at least 37.5% from the outside. So that rules out only Harlan Obiono, who's the true 7-footer that's able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Who should be able to dominate the glass in this one. Mount St. Mary's is a top 100 team with regards to rebound rate, but don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Joey Cordelia is able to give you 7.5 points, 4.8 rebounds per game. Now, this team is starting to heat up a little bit more from distance. You've been able to have Dakota LeFew coupled with the Sean Montgomery be able to shoot a combined about 36% from 3-point range. LeFew, 17.5 points, 4 assists per contest, but because he's had to go from being a little bit more of an off-the-ball scorer into that point guard spot, he has been turning the ball over quite a bit with 3+ turnovers per contest. It's a Mount St. Mary's team that at home is allowing opponents to shoot only 22% from 3-point range. They've been the beneficiaries of some good three-point shooting variance. So, and this is a Niagara team that certainly they have been getting a little bit torched from three-point, 284th in the country with this regard, but allowing opponents to shoot 30.5% from distance. I do think that both of these defenses see a little bit of regression, and I do think that Niagara is going to see a little bit of regression with regards to their outside shooting as well, but I do think that Wayne Marble has only been able to give you about 7 points per contest. See some positivity. I like Luke Bumblelow. He's a double-figure scorer over at Ball State 2 seasons ago. He's been able to chip in there about 10 points per game, and then the ancillary scorers like Josh Reeves, George Chinsley just haven't done a ton for Mount St. Mary's, so I do think that this is a good spot for a Niagara team that has really been a rocket ship recently with their offense. This is a Niagara team that's gotten to at least 75 points in each of their last 5 games. They're doing a relatively solid job holding up defensively as well. I'm not calling it amazing, but 74 points or fewer surrendered in 5 out of their last 6 games. Meanwhile, it's a Mount St. Mary's team that they themselves were able to do a solid job against Marist a few days ago, but they have now given up at least 69 points in 4 out of their last 5 games, so it is a spot where I do think that you're going to get quite a bit of scoring in this game. I do think that's going to be a little bit nip and tuck in the end. I do think that the Mount is able to pull it out, but I do think that this line has went a little bit too far. I do think that you get the late game following to be able to push it over at a 148. I'm going to be willing to take it over as I did set my total 148.5 and set my line at 4.5, so going to be willing to take 6+ here with Niagara. 845, 846 on the betting board. It is Siena. They're facing off against Marist. Marist finds themselves as favorites of 8.5 points. Draw this game is 132.5. For Marist, it was a deplorable display from them on offense after we made them the DK Network write-up on Friday. We're going to go back to them. We're not going to go with a write-up here, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Marist. Did set them as an 11-point favorite. It's a Siena squad that has been playing better ever since Drew Gordon has gotten in the fold. Drew Gordon is really leading the team in scoring. He's been able to put up 24 points and 9 rebounds in his 7 games with the program. That said, ever since he's been with the team, the defense has not necessarily been too terrific, as this is a bunch that has now given up at least 79 points in 4 of their last 5 games. For Siena, they are a bottom 20 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot as a collective 63% at the free throw line, 26.5% from three-point range, while being outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They go up against a Marist team that, in their game against Mount St. Mary's, where we lost that write-up, the defense was fine. They gave up 65 points. This is a Marist team that is in the top 30 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do a nice job of taking the ball away. They're a top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do shoot just 64% of the free throw line, though, and the offense has been a little bit of a hot mess all season long, but you do have a pair of guys that I do think are going to be able to bump that up, and Max Allen along with Josh Passarelli. These two guys have been able to come in for about 23.5 points per contest. Passarelli is your main guard, shooting about 35% from three-point range, and gotten a little bit more from the outside out of Jackson Price, but he was missing in that game that we saw a few nights ago, so you do want to be keeping that in mind, and I have factored him out as he's shooting about 41.5% from distance. That'll probably negatively affect Marist once again on offense, which is a reason why I did set my total at 131 here at the 132.5. I'm going to be looking at the under, but Marist has been very much a constant with regards to their defense in games that have wrapped up in regulation, because they have had a few games that have gone to overtime thus far this season. This team has allowed 71 points or fewer, and I believe all but 2 of them, so they've been able to do a tremendous job of just being able to lock teams down. I do think that for Siena, just not having a lot of efficiency at the point guard spot. Zach Tekken has been able to give you about 3.5 assists, but turns the ball over 3 times per contest. Michael Ely has only been shooting about 26.5% from three-point range when he's been out there. This is also a Siena team that they are getting lambasted on the glass. Not to say that Marist has necessarily been a tremendous team on the glass, but you know what, with this Marist team, at 226th, I think they're going to do just enough against a Siena bunch that you've been able to have a few guys be able to give you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. Giovanni Amaruju has been able to give you about 6 boards, 11 points per contest. Michael Evebrau, hopefully I said that correctly, he's been able to chip in there right around 5.5 boards per contest as well. It's actually a Siena team that's in the top 125 with regards to rebound rate. And that said, they're getting so many rebounds because they're missing so many stinking shots that it's not even funny. And I do think that a Marist squad that has been very much scuffling with their offense recently, that's putting it very politely, 61 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. They get going against a Siena team that has been getting completely cooked on defense, giving up 79 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that this is a low scoring slog that Marist is going to be able to cover. Set my line at 11, going to be willing to lay with Marist, and did make my total a 131, so also looking at this total under 847, 848 on the betting board. Oregon hits the road face off against Utah. Utah does find themselves as a favorite of 5 points. Total on this game is between 152.5 and 153, and it's a lot of what we were talking talking about with our good friend Rob Donaldson. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Utah. This is the second leg of the mountain road trip for Oregon. This is just an absolute grind. I remember working at the official flagship station of Oregon Athletics. They would always have a tough time with this one, and for this Oregon team, you've got a squad that now has N'Faly Dante back in fold, and that's big because for N'Faly Dante, he's played in 3 games this far this season and is averaging 9.3 rebounds per game. This is obviously a very small sample size, so if you go back to what he was logging last season, he was able to give you 13.5 points, 8.5 boards. I think that's realistic to expect that. They've been without Nate Biddle for quite some time. They're finally getting him back to the fold, but he played a whopping 1 minute in that game against Colorado, so I would say your expectations should be very, very thin, if anything, for him in this game. What you've got to be expecting is Jackson Shellstead to continue to take hold of this offense. As Shellstead has done a tremendous job being able to shoot about 43.5% from 3, 14 points per contest, but they go up against a Utah team that's just a completely different animal with their defense at home. They're giving up more than 30 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot-your-corner environment, and they just completely lock you down from 3-point range. Utah on the road, allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from 3 at home. That goes down to 29.1% from the outside. This is an Oregon team that they allow opponents to really shoot it from 3 as well. At home, that's about 29.5%. In a road/shoot-your-corner environment, they are allowing opponents to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, and this is an Oregon team that they are negatively affected on the road. They're giving up about 14.1 points more per 100 possessions in a road/shoot-your-corner environment, and now they have to go up against the 7-footer in Braden Carlson, who's able to give you 17-plus points per contest, 6-plus boards, is able to shoot it well from 3-point range. It's a Utah team that has been dealing with a little bit of an ailment to Raleigh Worcester. Did not affect them at all against Oregon State. Now, granted, it's an Oregon State team that absolutely stinks, but you know what? For Utah, they should be able to have guys like Blaze Keita and company be able to do a solid job of playing even up down low, and then with having someone like Gabe Manson that's able to shoot about 45.5% from 3-point range, has been able to give the team 13.5 points per contest, with also having guys like Cole Badgema, Davion Smith being able to make those nice ancillary production of about 5 points per contest, and for Smith, 5.1 assists to just 1 turnover per game. So even if you don't have a fully 100% Raleigh Worcester in this spot, as he's missed the last 2 games, you're still able to feel good about that facilitation. I do think that Utah should be able to get it done. I did set them as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in. Did set my total at 152. This is an Oregon team that is certainly giving it up on defense when they're away from home, but at the same time, this Utah team really locks you down in Salt Lake City. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Utah. 849, 850 on the betting board. UTSA, meet for the Roadrunners. They play us to Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, a 16-point favorite, and your total is 160.5. I feel like the name brand of Florida Atlantic is getting them overhyped by about like 2 or so points. I set my line at a 14.5. So here at the 16, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with UTSA. UTSA has been a mess on defense. They are outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're absolutely giving up the arc. We saw that in their last game against Tulsa, but this is also a UTSA team that does a relatively solid job of taking care of the ball, and they go up against a Florida Atlantic team that's outside the top 110 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Florida Atlantic outside the top 150 in regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and Jordan Ivy Curry is now back to the fold for UTSA. He's been able to give the team 15 plus points at each of the last 5 games, chipping in their 6 boards, 4 assists, a steal per contest, going up against a Florida Atlantic team that really doesn't generate a lot of turnovers. He himself has had about 3 per game, but for this UTSA team, I do think that the overall versatility is going to help them out in this spot. You've got Trey Fuller Jr. along with Carlton Lingard, combining for a little bit north of 20 points per contest. They shoot as a collective about 32.5% from 3-point range. Florida Atlantic should be able to win the battle down low, with Vladislav Golden doing a solid job, being able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Giancarlo Rosado, he's been able to do a nice job of being able to chip in there some boards off the bench as well. It's a Florida Atlantic team that's 57th in the country with regards to rebound rate. UTSA more in that neighborhood, about 175th. But for this Florida Atlantic team, again, I think that the offense is going to be just fine. John L. Davis, 17.5 points, shooting 47.5% from 3. Florida Atlantic, a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It has traveled quite well. You've got Elijah Mitchell chipping in there right around about 13 points per contest. Nicholas Boyd, he's been in and out of the fold, but when he's been in, he's been able to give you about 10 points per contest. There's no qualms with this Florida Atlantic offense, but they have not covered a single spread in American Conference play because they've given up 70 plus points in each of their last 4 games. So despite the fact that the team has gotten to 79 in 4 of their last 5 games, it's been an issue for them, and for UTSA, certainly this defense, it is starting to be a big giant issue for them. They have been getting gashed for at least 78 points in now 5 out of their last 6 games. So I do think that you get a nice nice high-scoring expose in this one. Semi-total 162.5. Win at the over end with UTSA 15 plus. I'm going to be willing to take the points. 851, 852 on the betting board. It is East Tennessee State playing us to Chattanooga. Chattanooga, a 1.5 point road favorite. Your total on this game is 144. Said ETSU as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be taking a look at them right on the money line. It's a Chattanooga team that has gotten in reinforcements. You've got Trey Bonham. He was playing for Dan Earl over at VMI a few seasons ago. Transferred over to Florida, and because he was a 2-time transfer, he was barred from playing at the beginning part of the season. But he and Hunter Huff, ever since they have been able to reunite, they've been able to form a really nice duo. I love what these two have been able to do, as they've been able to give you a combined about 33 to 34 points per contest. When it comes to Hunter Huff, he does a nice job of being able to give you some good facilitation as well. 3 assists per game, and as a matter of fact, between the two of these guys, they're able to give about 3.7 steals per contest. And Bottom is right now shooting 50% from 3-point range. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of fall off with that regard, as it is a Chattanooga team that right now is about 172nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but not quite the same team when they're away from home, as they have been giving up 18.9 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot corner environment rather than at home. And this ETSU team is relatively solid on defense. They're about 196th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up about 8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. It is an ETSU team that is not really going to light it up from 3-point range. Jaden Seymour has some good versatility with about 15 points, shipping in their 6.5 boards. He shoots about 36.5% from 3. This for a squad that, as a collective, they're shooting just 29.8% from 3-point range, but I do think that ETSU going to do a good job closing out and being able to do a solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc themselves. ETSU is about 192nd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's been significantly better at home. Meanwhile, Chattanooga allowing opponents to shoot 36.5% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot corner environment, and we've also got the best low post defender in this game on the side of ETSU as well. That'd be Jaden Parker. Comes in from North Florida, not really going to give you any sort of stretchability or anything like that, but has been able to do a solid job, give you about 4 boards, 1.8 blocks per contest. Love what he's been able to bring to the table. And then Ebi Asamoah shoots about 35% from 3. He's been able to chip in their 15 plus points per contest as well for Chattanooga. Credit to Zoop. They've given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. And this is an ETSU team that they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to hang in there with teams. They have lost each out of their last 4 games. That said, they go on the road. They lose by single digits against Furman. They lose a nip and tuck game against Wofford. I do think that they're going to be able to bust out here after having to play some relatively stiff competition and going up against the Chattanooga team that I do have my question marks with regards to this defense. So I did set my line at 2. I'm going to be willing to take ETSU outright on the money line, and I did set my total at 144. These are a pair of teams that they're relatively mid-tempo. So here at the 144, it's a little bit of wait and see if we can get up to more like a 144.5, 145. I'm going to be taking a look at the under at a 143 to 143.5. It's going to be a dive for me on the over. I was seeing some 143.5s a little bit earlier, so at that number, I'd be taking a look at the over to go along with ETSU outright on the money line. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we eat the extra games. 8:53, 8:54. It is Indiana State in the road face-off against Murray State. Murray State is a home underdog of 5 points to last game between 155 and 155.5. Saw some 156 out there as well, and I did set my total at 155. So here at the 155.5, 156, I'm going to be taking a look at the under. This is an Indiana State team as a top 25 team nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I do think that Murray State is going to be able to find a way to slow this game down just enough for this under to be able to hit Murray State in terms of total possessions per game, 298th in all of college basketball. And for Indiana State, this is a team that's looking to play at warp speed, 69th in the country, very nice in terms of total possessions per game, and the big key for Murray State trying to hold in this game is whether or not they can guard the 3-point arc, and I think the answer is going to be a resounding no, which is why I set my number at 7. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Indiana State is by far the most versatile player out there on the floor, Robbie Avila. He does a little bit of everything at right around 6'10", 15.5 points, 7.5 boards, 4 assists while shooting 41.9% from 3-point range. And for this Indiana State team, among their top 6 scorers, 5 of them shoot at least 41.4% from 3-point range. Now they go up against a Murray State team that, with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, is 293rd in the country, and at home it's allowing opponents to shoot 38.5% from 3-point range. Well, Indiana State is not necessarily the just absolute monsters when it comes to defense. They're actually 125th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is an Indiana State team that it's not like they're an abject disaster when it comes to their defense. Indiana State about 111th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now they're giving up north of 22 points more per 100 100 possessions when they leave home going up against a Murray State team. Well, certainly this has been a bit of an issue for them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 189th in all of college basketball, and actually giving up 6.1 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home. But I do think that for Indiana State, with having so much versatility at the guard spot, having Isaiah Swope being able to shoot 44% from three-point range with about 18.5 points per contest, with being able to have Xavier Bledsoe and Julian Larry be able to combine for 7 assists per contest, it's going to take it out of a Murray State team in which you've got a relatively nice duo for this team in the backcourt as well. You've been able to have Jacoby Wood along with Rob Perry combined for about 26 points per contest, and Wood is able to shoot 42.5% from three. And to the credit of Murray State, they only turned the ball over 9.3 times per contest, but they only also shoot about 32% from three-point range. You don't have a lot of rebounding aside from Nick Ellingson, who's able to give you about 6 boards per contest. Lone guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Murray State well outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate. Defense has been much better for Murray State, giving up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. And to the credit of Indiana State, they've actually allowed 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. The lone exception was against Drake. So I do think that this total is just a little bit too high, because while I do think that Indiana State is going to be the hammer, the nail is going to be Murray State, and the nail is not going to be able to get a lot of points. So I set my line at 7. I'm going to be willing to lay with Indiana State and going to be taking a look at this total under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-623, 306-624, it's Sacred Heart, and they're going to be playing us all Wagner. Wagner is an underdog of 4 points with your total 134, and I said Sacred Heart is a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. For the Sacred Heart bunch, they had to deal with an injury to Tanner Thomas, who was shooting like 48.5% from three-point range, was a double-figure score with good 6'6" guys, but you still have Nico Galletti along with Alex Sobel doing a nice job locking it down low with about 13.5 rebounds per game, and for Galletti, he's a 6'6" do-it-all player that's only shooting about 30.5% from three-point range, but has been able to chip in there 2 steals, 2 assists per contest. Love his overall game for a Sacred Heart team that does a good job of being able to value the ball. They only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, and they do a good job of being able to come up with steals, with right around about 9.5 per game. You've had Raheem Solomon come in from Niagara. He's been able to give you about 8 or so points per contest. You've also been able to get Aiden Carpenter, who was over at Siena. He also gives you a similar amount of points, and he's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range. When it comes to Sacred Heart, in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, this team is actually 28th in all of college basketball, going up against a Wagner team that they always do a pretty rock-solid job with regards to their defense. This is a Wagner team that they don't necessarily specialize in turnovers. They're about 137th in the country, but they just make life miserable on you, for lack of a better term. They play at a bottom 50 pace in terms of total possessions per game. Wagner really locks it down from three-point range. They are 30th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and now they do have a top-flight scorer, Melvin Council, who's been able to give you about 14 points per contest. The problem is there's no Robin to Melvin Council, as they were looking to Zaire Williams being that guy who was giving the team right around about 8 or 9 points per contest, but he went down with an injury in early December. This is a Wagner team that they really don't have a lot of rebounding either. That's a big giant issue, as Council is the only guy that's currently healthy that gives you north of 4.7 rebounds per game. It is a Wagner team that, to their credit, they actually do a really good job of taking care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 9.3 times per contest. That is a top 40 mark in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but with Wagner being 270th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and the Sacred Heart team also being relatively rough on the glass, but at the very least having that versatility with guys like Sobel, with having Nico Galletti being able to do what he does, and you've also been able to get some relatively good production, about 4 boards, 5 points per game out of Raymond Espinal Guzman, who's been able to do a solid job being able to give you a little bit of versatility with that regard as well. I do think that this Sacred Heart team gets the job done in what I think is going to be a slow grind of a game. This is a Wagner team that has allowed 65 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, and last time Wagner gave up north of 70 points, you have to go back 8 games ago against Boston U, where they gave up 73. As a matter of fact, for Wagner, I think that they've allowed north of 73 once all season long. This is a Sacred Heart team that they've been able to get to at least 79 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so it is a situation of something's got to give. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Sacred Heart, and did set my total 133. I do think that this game gets slowed down, as this is also a Sacred Heart team that has allowed 67 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. So looking at the under and willing to lay with Sacred Heart. 306-625, 306-626. Lemoyne is going to be playing us to St. Francis of Pennsylvania. St. Francis is an underdog of 4.5 points. Total is 140.5. Made Lemoyne a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with St. Francis of Pennsylvania. You just don't have any helping hands to your main guys, and Eli Wilborn along with Cam Gregory. Gregory, your main scorer, 13.5 points, 1.2 steals on 35.5% three-point shooting, though I will say Aaron Talbot has now been able to shoot about 39.5% from 3, 2 assists, 8.5 points per game, but you've got who I was mentioning before, Wilborn, who's been able to give you 9.5 points, 7.5 boards. Past that, you just don't have anything for the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that's outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's a St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that's really given it up from three-point range as well. This team is outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, going up against a Lemoyne team that has seen a really nice boost from being at home this season as well. With this Lemoyne team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 300, and this is a Lemoyne team that they themselves, they just don't have a lot down low. K.M. Cleary has been able to come in from Ball State. He stands right around 6'6". He gives you about 6 rebounds per game, and right now he's a top player on the glass for the team, a Lemoyne team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis is 283rd, but they are giving up 10.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot scoring environment. And this is a Lemoyne team that they do a good job of taking care of the ball. St. Francis, about 13 turnovers per game, more like 11.9 for Lemoyne, with Luke Sutherland being able to supply 13.5 points on 39% for three-point shooting, and Cleary also shoots about 39.7% from the outside. As a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers for this Lemoyne team are shooting at least 37.8% from the outside. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team. You've been able to have Nate LaFleur along with Cypher Owens be able to combine for about 17.5 points per contest, and then past that, don't have anyone else that really gives you north of 7 points per contest. And for Lemoyne, this team has absolutely no rebounding whatsoever, but the good news is that Achilles heel that gets protected against the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team as just 261st with regards to their rebound rate as well. So I do think that Lemoyne going to be able to get the job done at home, and this is a Lemoyne team that actually has a positive rebound rate when they're at home as well. They've really been able to feed off of their home crowd. It's a St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that's also just having a really difficult time being able to score. This team has scored 72 points or fewer in all but 2 of their games against Division I opponents thus far this season. Meanwhile, you've got a Lemoyne team that they've been able to get to at least 73 points in now 3 of their last 4 games and 72 plus in all but 1 of their games ever since Christmas. So this is a spot where I did set my total at 142. I do think that Lemoyne going to be able to get the job done. I think that this could be a game where it's going to be close enough for late game filling. So set my line at 6-1 to lay with Lemoyne. Set my total 142. So also looking over 3-6-6-27, 3-6-6-28. Merrimack is going to be playing us to Stone Hill is an underdog of 13 points with your total 132.5. Set my number at a 128.5 with regards to this total. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. This Merrimack team just always does such a rock solid job with their defense. They are 73rd in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this home crowd just really powers this team to victory. If you're looking only at home games in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis for the Old Mary men, they're a top 55 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Merrimack once again in the top 10 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, as you've got Jordan Detkock, who is the most versatile player in my opinion in the entire conference. He stands right around 6'5", 17.5 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists, north of 2 steals per contest, and then you've got your main guy in terms of generating turnovers at Adam Clark as a true freshman. He's been able to give you 2.5 steals, 4 assists, 10.5 points. It is a Merrimack team that they themselves turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, but they go up against a Stone Hill team that, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, bottom 50 in the country, despite the fact that Tony Felder has been halfway decent at the point guard spot. 12 points, 3 assists. He only shoots about 30% from three-point range. And this is a Stone Hill team that they are just absolutely giving it up on defense outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They have no rhyme or reason for guarding the arc in a roadside shoot guard environment, allowing opponents to shoot 38.1% from three-point range. And the Stone Hill team just has absolutely nothing down low as well. Where you want to be attacking this Merrimack team is on the glass, as Merrimack 357th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You got Max Zagorowski, who gives you about 4.5 rebounds per game, but Stone Hill 355th with this regard. So if you have absolutely no edge on the glass, you really don't have much of a chance against this Merrimack team. And as a matter of fact, for Stone Hill, they don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. You've got Todd Barogna along with Paulo Padillas, who comes over from Hartford. They've both been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game, and that's about it. I think Merrimack going to be forcing a lot of turnovers. Merrimack going to be able to get this game at their speed, which is super slow, under control, and defense-oriented. Set my line at 14.5, 1 to lay with Merrimack, and set my total 128.5, so also looking at the under, and we wrap things up with 3 at 6-6-29, 3 at 6-6-30. Long Island is going to be playing us to Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut does find themselves currently as a 7-point favorite. We're seeing a few 6.5s now out there as well. Total on this game is between 145.5 and 146, and I did set my line at a 7, so here at the 6.5 that I'm seeing, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Central Connecticut. For Long Island, to their credit, they're actually a top 80 team in all of college college basketball with regards to guarding the three-point arc, which is big against a Central Connecticut team that does not have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but you do have Jordan Jones along with Alan Jean Rose, who will be able to combine for 29 points. Both are shooting north of 36% from distance. It's a team that as a whole, they only shoot about 31.2% from three-point range, but the problem for Long Island is, even though this is a Central Connecticut team, that they're outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, not like Long Island is doing a great job with this regard either. 340th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. They've been able to have the Stricklands and Ty and Terrell Strickland, along with their father, Rod Strickland, really take over the program with Terrell, 7.5 points, right around about 3 assists. Shoots 35.5% from 3, and Ty is your main scorer with 14 points, 2 assists, 2 steals. He also shoots about 22% from three-point range. This for a bunch in LIU that only shoots as a collective about 28% from the outside, and that is a prime way to be able to attack this Central Connecticut team. Central Connecticut has had a tough time guarding the arc all season long, to earn 58th with this regard, allowing opponents to shoot about 35% from three-point range when they're at home, and not being able to exploit that. I do think that that's going to be a big giant issue for an LIU team that has had a tough time taking care of the ball. They are turning the ball over north of 13.5 times per contest. I really do think that this is going to be a rough ordeal for them. It's an LIU team that it just feels like they're trying to play a little bit too fast for their own good, with them not being able to man up on glass. I do think that this is going to be a very good spot for Central Connecticut to be able to get the job done, especially with Kellen Amos being able to give you a double-figure amount of points, and this LIU team just not being able to generate offense on the road. 356th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. And if you take a look at things in a roadside-shoot-scored environment, a bottom 12 offense with regards to points scored. So this is a spot where I did set my line at -7 with Central Connecticut. I'm going to be willing to lay it in. The reason why I did set my total at 147 is that you do have an LIU defense that, while they do a solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc, they just get absolutely tattooed inside. And this is an LIU team that, in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, clocks in 290th in the nation and is actually giving up more points per possession at home rather than on the road, which I do find to be very strange. So going to be willing to lay up to 6.5 with Central Connecticut. Set my total at 147, so looking at the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we are for those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, maybe it does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.